I think on an authorship level, on a philosophical level, if you say, I am a musician, this is my album, I really believe in it and it expresses what I'm trying to say, it doesn't matter how it was made. It could have been made all by Suno for that matter. And it could be, that doesn't mean it's good or bad. But if you say this is my sound and I stand behind it, like that's all it takes to have authorship of it. If what you're saying you stand behind is just cheesy pop tracks you made in an hour and Suno, maybe that's more about you.
Welcome to AI Experience, the podcast that demystifies artificial intelligence. My name is Julien Redelsperger, and we are going to find out how AI is changing the world. And I'm super happy to welcome John von Seggern. He founded Futureproof Music School and previously helped reshape online music education. His work combines hands-off mentorship with adaptive AI tools that help students develop their skills in music production, sound design, and creative expression. So today, we're going to talk about AI and electronic music production. Thank you for joining me today. How are you, John?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Julian. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, totally. It's going to be super interesting. And maybe we just get started with some basics because for listeners who are not music producers, like what does music production actually mean and what has AI changed in that process?
I think it's best to take a larger frame to look at that question. So, music production, I think the best way to think of it is like film production. If you're producing a piece of music, that means you are responsible end to end for the result. And when you put it out in the world, you're saying, this is what I have produced. My name is on it. I take responsibility for it, regardless of how it was produced. There's music where somebody just recorded the sound of nature and overlaid that, but they were the ones that chose that particular recording was the part that they were curating to put out in the world. You know what I mean? But anyway, you're responsible for the whole process. So how has AI changed that process? Uh, People are experimenting with using AI at many different points in that process. At one extreme, there are platforms where people are just prompting entire pieces.
Hmm.
I think among professional music producers, there's a lot more interest in using AI for particular parts of the process. Probably the most popular AI technique in music actually is AI mastering. So you've done the whole music and you just need to finish it to send it out in the world, and you do that with AI. It's also starting to become popular to use AI to make pieces of the music, like to make new drum loops or new variations of samples that you might have.
So that means the music creation, creating new loop, new music, it's part of the music production. So music production is pretty broad. It's like from A to Z, and music creation is like embedded into that process.
I mean, it's the same process. You're creating sounds, or actually to be more clear, you're curating sounds and forming them into patterns. That is what music creation
Hmm.
production is at root. It
Okay.
You could have played the sounds, you might have found them in a library of samples, you might have
Okay.
made them with AI, but the important part is you decided those were the ones you were using, and then you assembled them, and then you made them into a piece.
And so, what's your background, John? Like, why are you interested into music production and AI? What's your experience?
Well, I've been a musician all my life, and I've also been really interested in new technologies and keeping up with that all my life. Those are probably my twin passions in life. I started as an acoustic jazz musician. I'm a jazz bassist, actually, but
Okay.
I've been a musician for 30 years, and I've lived through multiple technological revolutions that have changed how we do everything as musicians. Um, I guess my passion about AI is just the latest technology that is extending our abilities as human beings, and I find it very exciting for that reason.
And so, when did you found? Sorry, when did you create Future Proof Music School? Was it because of AI, or was it created prior the Gen AI revolution?
Um, I've always so my main role in education has been very specific. I work in online education of electronic music producers, and I've always been trying to find new technologies to help people learn faster and better and easier. I started trying to use AI at my previous school, my previous job, as soon as ChatGPT was released and it became possible to do those sort of things. I started Futureproof about a year and a half ago with my former head teacher at my last school, who is a dubstep artist himself. And the AI is a big part of it, but it's not the only part. We're trying to teach musicians. That is still the main focus, but we're trying to use AI to help them learn better and faster.
So AI is not taking the place of teachers and mentors and coaches. It's what? An extra layer to build something new for the students.
In my view, the way it's working out the best is when you're learning fundamentals and basic skills, that's where AI can help the most because it can patiently explain it to you 10 different ways, or it can explain to you how a concept that you're learning relates to what you're personally doing, instead of just learning something in the abstract. But as you become more advanced, it becomes more a matter of taste and aesthetic decisions, and the AI can't really help you with that. You have to be the one that decides what kind of music you want to make. The AI is just a helpful assistant that can help you learn how to get there. And so I should say we believe that when you get to a intermediate or higher level, that's when you do need personal guidance from someone who's walked the path before you and has mastered those skills already, and that can really save you a huge amount of time. Someone who is an expert listening to your music and then saying, "Oh, here is the one thing that you're not getting, that you need to work on."
So can AI really give good advice in terms of music? Like, can it says, okay, it's a good track, it's a bad track, this is where you need to improve, or this one is good enough, you can proceed to the next step. I'm just curious about.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it depends on, well, there's technical aspects of music and there's creative artistic aspects. So up to a point on the technical level, the AI is really useful. Like one of the AI features that we have for Futureproof is called the Mix Assistant. And basically what that does is you upload a mix that you've made, and using AI, it tries to figure out what type of music you're making. So, are you making dubstep? Are you making ambient music? Are you making classical music? And then, based on that, it tries to figure out from its prior knowledge. I have a library of information, but it figures out like if you're making techno, the frequency should be somewhere in this range because that's the range that all other techno songs are in. So if your bass is way higher than that range, it's probably wrong, right? And then the AI explains that to you, and it might say, "Oh, your like I just was testing it. It said your kick drum is really weak and doesn't have enough bass, and you probably can't fix that by just turning the bass louder. You probably need to layer another kick drum under it that is bassier, and that would solve that problem." You see what I mean? It's that kind of technical issue, but it can't tell me like, "Oh, you're totally off on the wrong track. You should try making a different kind of music, or you should go for a walk in the park," or something like this. The AI can't help you with that.
But how does AI know what is dubstep, electronic, trance, hardcore music? I mean, what's the knowledge base? How do you train AI to make this type of decisions and advice?
I mean, so I should say I am a musician myself. I am not creating AI models.
Mhm.
And I don't think 98% of us that are working in AI are not creating AI models. We're using
Exactly.
the AI
Yeah.
models of OpenAI and Anthropic and Google. So in this case, for analyzing music, by far the best models are from Google, the Gemini models. The other ones they haven't really focused on that, so they can't really do it actually. But Gemini, and the fact is we don't know what it was trained on, right? I would assume that Google trained Gemini on all the music they could get their hands on, which is probably everything on YouTube and everything else. But That's kind of not in my control. What's in my control is using the best tool that works the best for the job.
But that means you have to assess every new models because I mean we have new models, every month more or less, or every quarter. So every time you have a new model, a new version of a model, like a new Gemini, a new Claude, a new OpenAI, uh, you have to assess them to make sure it is still consistent and maybe decide this one is better than the old one, so I'm going to put this one into my program or website or system.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question, and I have experimented with that a lot, but it seems from what I can tell that, and also the labs don't talk about that a lot. They don't tell you what they, are good at and bad at exactly. But from what I've figured out, the only models I've seen that are good at analyzing music were GPT 4o was good because that was a multimodal model. Subsequent GPT models have not been able to analyze music at all or been really bad at it. So I think they stopped doing that. Claude can't really do it at all. And Gemini Pro 2.5 is the current king. It seems after Gemini 2.5, Gemini 3 didn't seem quite as good to me. So I don't know if Google has de emphasized music analysis in their training runs or whatever, but most models cannot do it actually. Very few models are capable of analyzing music at all. And I think it's because it's not really a focus for the labs.
Okay. So I know we're here to discuss music production and not music creation per se, but with software like Suno, for example, how easy it is to create electronic music these days and how good it is from your point of view.
I think that's actually a complicated question. I think there's different ways of answering that question. So I think clearly from the numbers that we see, millions of people think Suno is good enough to make music with and have fun with for themselves. That's clear. They're paying for it already. But there's few cases of that music being widely listened to by people, I think. There have been a few cases which have been widely shown, that such and such became number one in the country chart or whatever. But I have seen some really interesting breakdowns of those figures. So, for example, you might have seen some of the platforms like Spotify are saying, oh, like 25% of all the music being uploaded is made by AI. But that music is getting very few listens. In this day and age, nobody's going to listen to your music, even if it's the greatest music in the world, you unless you mount a years long campaign of promotion and branding and everything. And so just making the music is just part of it. You know what I mean? Even if you could just prompt AI to make the greatest music in the world, that's no guarantee that it's going to go anywhere or anyone will ever care about it.
As a musician yourself, if I make you listen to two different tracks, one AI generated, one created by an artist, a human artist, do you think you'll be able to know the difference and to know which one is which?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. At the moment, with the state of the technology, any of the top models that I play with, no matter how good people say they are, like Suno or whatever, if I play with Suno for half an hour, I get really tired of listening to it because all the tracks sound kind of the same.
Hmm.
It's not that the music is the same, but there's something about the sonic quality itself that is the same. They all sound like they were made by the same machine somehow. And there's a certain irreducible level of artifacts or kind of fuzziness that you can never really get rid of. So from that standpoint, I don't really like the music that I've made with Suno. Um, Having said that, I mean, we can only assume that it's going to get better and better. And I think with music specifically, the roadblock to making better music with AI is more about the data access and licensing than it is about the technology. Music the music copyright cartels fight back harder than in some other areas, so that has limited what routes of progress are possible
So
in the
you
industry.
talk to artists, musicians every day. What do they tell you about AI? Are they concerned, excited, worried? Like, what's their mindset?
Well, it's interesting. What I've found is that the people who are the most interested in learning about making music and modern music production, they aren't really that interested in using AI to do it because
Mhm.
I don't know if they're philosophically opposed to it, but it's not really the process that they're looking for. They don't want to just enter some language and then have a finished product come out. They actually want to go through the creative process of making the music. That's why they like making music in the first place. So I don't see much interest from the producers that we work with in using AI. However, reading there's been some interesting surveys and reports about that recently, and I do think I see more interest among producers in using it like to brainstorm ideas or maybe come up with a beat or a part or something like that. I can imagine that that will grow, and I imagine the tools for doing that will improve also. In the long run, I expect that it'll become integrated into people's workflows one way or another, and this debate will go away. Honestly, that's what I would
So
think.
could it be a new way also to find, new sound, new loops? I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, musicians needed to go to like music stores and, chat with each other and discover new artists and new songs. This process may be replaced by AI now.
I mean, yeah, yes, but that process has been replaced by other technologies already for like 20 years. So the main technology that people use to find samples for the last 10 or more years has been online sample libraries where you're just like browsing through a long list of things and trying to pick them out. The biggest company that does that is called Splice. They recently introduced a technology which is actually pretty cool, I think, where uh the way theirs works is so you're browsing like a sample pack that was made by somebody. So let's say you're going through a list of like conga drum loops that somebody recorded. So with their new technology, you can generate new variations of the conga loops, but by doing that, you're still generating revenue that goes back to the person that made that. Because I think theirs is like you're not generating like new things based on their entire catalog. You're generating things based on this sample pack that Joe Blow made. So then he's going to get part of the money.
Mhm.
Um, so that solves the attribution issue for them. I think that's quite cool, actually. I mean, in some ways, it feels more creative to use AI to come up with new loops than it does to just use the same library of loops that everybody else has access to. You know.
And so when you create a song, what are the next key steps in terms of music production? And how could AI help? Like, help me understand. Like, I have a song. What's next?
Well, you have to look from the beginning of that process, like leaving AI out of it for a minute. It's like, how do people make electronic music in the first place, and how have they been doing it for years? So it's not really true for most people. Maybe somebody works like this, but most people don't sit down and think like in their head. They're like, I want to make this song that I can totally imagine from beginning to end, and my work is just trying to translate it. Like we always talk about making the sound in your head, but I don't think that's really right, actually. I don't think that's how most people work. And the way that most people work is you have a way that many people work is you use a workflow where you have two kinds of sessions. One kind of session, you're just coming up with material. So you might just have a synthesizer and you're just like creatively messing around with it and with no particular goal in mind. You're just like making sounds. And then you curate the best ones of those, you save them somewhere. And then the next day you might come back and say, okay, now we're going to put all these sounds together and make it into a track. That's a very different mental state because at that point you're thinking more logically, like we need an intro, we need the verse, we have to fit the things together. But when you're designing the sounds, you want to put that out of your head and just try to go for a more creative kind of headspace where you're, because that's where new ideas could come. So as far as AI, if you're generating new ideas, the way people do it now, the way people did it before AI, a lot, I want to say the majority of the time, people are either browsing through lists of things and picking them, browsing through presets and then altering them, taking something from one place and combining it with another thing. That's how people come up with ideas, or randomly twisting knobs on something and seeing what comes out and recording it. So the whole process of making electronic music, I think, has always been like kind of a curation process more than a generate from a blank page type of process. So AI just gives you another source to generate things from.
Mhm.
Personally, I don't use AI for that at the moment because it's slow. Honestly, it takes me out of the flow because it takes too long sitting there waiting for things to generate. I'd rather just twist the knobs. It's a little faster. But then when you're assembling the things, AI could play a role. I think the most promising area is probably with mixing and mastering. And that's an area that we've tried to work on for the school with our mix assistant. So my mix assistant, it tries to tell you things like, uh, your track has too many parts overlapping in the low mid range of the frequency spectrum, and it makes it sound muddy. And it'll tell you if you could maybe use an EQ to uh, take the low end off the guitar part, that might make everything sound clearer. But it's offering you like techniques or options to try. The AI doesn't know what the right thing to do is, but it can know like most people do it like this, and that'll probably work for you if you try it. That's kind of the
Okay.
level.
It identifies patterns and like good practices based on its knowledge base.
Now, of course, if you are trying to do some really crazy thing or sound that nobody's done before, the AI isn't going to know that. Although potentially you could get the AI to know what you're trying to do and recognize it, and then help you.
Do you think that each musician, electronic musician, should have its own signature sound, like something personal, something consistent over time?
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by should. I mean, it brings up the question of why are we creating music at all in the first place? But I think there's two ways to look at that, though. On an artistic level, I believe personally, like, if you're not trying to do your own thing and bring your own art into the world, why are you doing this? Like, what? It doesn't make sense to me. But even on a practical level, um, you can't just aspire to being the nth copycat of some famous artist because there's already a lot of them. So if you're like, I'm going to be in this guy's lane, but I'm number 684, that's not the ticket to a successful future career. I guess and that's always the tempting thing as an artist. It's always like, oh, everybody loves this stuff, I'll get into this sound and make it too. But by the time you get there, like, other things will be happening and it won't be that anymore. You need to be on the tick of something to really make it. So I do believe your best bet for success as an artist is to do your own thing and strike out as yourself and find your own sound.
Okay.
And that's what I've always tried to help people do.
So AI is not a shortcut.
AI can't really help you do that. I mean, but you can talk to it and try to brainstorm your ideas. It's a helpful thought partner a lot of times.
That's interesting. Is there a track that is made with AI but released under a human artist name? I mean, the question is more about the authorship, like who owns the music, something that's been created with or by AI versus something that's been created by a human. Like, do you think musicians would be proud to say my track's been created with AI?
No.
How do people talk about it? That's my question. Is it is it something like we keep it as a secret and we do not talk about it, or no, that's fine?
It is like that at the moment, I would say, because at the moment, especially in electronic music, like dubstep, there is a lot. It's very complex, and it's quite difficult, honestly, to manipulate all the sounds and get them to work together and, make a good sound at a professional level. But so there's a lot of bad feeling about something that would let you take a shortcut past all of that, right? But I think there's a couple. I would say there's a couple interesting perspectives I use to think about that. You're talking about like authorship in a philosophical sense, but also in a legal sense. So, in a philosophical sense, I actually think like these conversations about who made this and who is the artist and something, that has been a live conversation in Western art history for like 100 years. Marcel Duchamp put a urinal in a museum and was like, "This is my piece," and it was like he was the one that decided to bring it there and put it there and hang it on the wall. And the modern version of the guy that duct taped the banana to the wall. So I think on an authorship level, on a philosophical level, if you say, I am a musician, this is my album, I really believe in it and it expresses what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter how it was made. It could have been made all by Suno for that matter. And it could be, that doesn't mean it's good or bad. But if you say this is my sound and I stand behind it, like that's all it takes to have authorship of it in a philosophical sense. If what you're saying you stand behind is just cheesy pop tracks you made in an hour and Suno, maybe that's more about you about music. But the other way to look at it, though, is copyright and ownership, which is also a very important way to look at it. And that is still somewhat unresolved. There's lawsuits still continuing. I would anticipate that the lawsuits will be resolved in some way or another. And the AI music industry will continue in some form, but I'm not sure exactly how it will turn out. And some of the big platforms and tools, notably Suno again, I don't think you'd want to rely on that for any kind of commercial music project because it might turn out that the copyright is suspect in the end. And I do know, sorry, but I do know composers working in LA that have told me, I won't use any of those tools for anything because I can't. Part of their contract is they have to warrant to the film, this is 100% original music that doesn't contain any uncleared samples. And if there are, I am personally financially liable. Like that's part of what you're saying
Oh
when
wow,
you're
okay.
a soundtrack creator. You know what I
Do
mean?
you discuss legal matters, copyright with your students at Futureproof Music School?
Um, it doesn't come up that much to be honest, because most of the students are not trying. I mean, none of the students that I know of are trying to make music this way, so it's not really relevant to them.
And is there any genre that is easier to create or to produce in electronic music? Specific genre maybe like dubstep would be easier. Dubstep would be easier than I don't know, house or ambient or something like that.
It's fun. I'm not sure exactly about that, but it's funny. I did read that one of the studies of what people are creating with AI said that by far the top genres that people are creating are like country, pop, and gospel. And actually, electronic music was very small. And I think that I don't know why that is, but I suspect the kind of people that make electronic music, they're really, really interested in the process of making it and they love it. It's like I don't know, it's a very intricate hobby where you're learning very complicated. It's kind of like hot rodding a car or making your own computer or something. And everybody has kind of their own way to do it that's a little bit different than everyone else. So I don't think there's a lot of interest there in making it with
So you
AI.
need to have an engineer's mindset to create electronic music.
In part, you do, yeah, because getting the sounds to sound just like you want is challenging. But I mean, like on a very basic level, most people when they start, they're making music in their bedroom, which is not an accurate room to mix in, and they make a piece of music and then they take it to somebody else's house and it sounds awful because just the frequencies are all out of balance. Those are the kind of things you learn when you study.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. Well, thank you so much, John. So we're almost at the end of the episode. Just before we wrap up, I'd like to move to the final segment of the show. If our listeners were to remember just three things from our conversation, what would it be? Key ideas, practical tips, decisions to make. No theory, pure practical takeaways. What would it be?
Okay, sure. Well, I I think yeah, I have a few tips for you. One of the most useful frames about AI that I think for a lot of things is often AI can help you easily get to like 80% of your project, but the last 20% it just can't do, or it takes much longer, or you have to be much more personally involved. I think that is going to probably, it seems like that's leading us to a space like where I have AI doing 80% of what I was doing before. Now I'm just focusing on this is 20%, but I guess that becomes now 100%, right? I spend
Mhm.
all my time now on those things and do a better job. because I'm focusing on those are usually the things where you're making decisions or using your taste to decide which better than another thing. So I think that's a really that 80-20 frame is really
Okay,
important.
so that's number
Um,
one. Number two?
Number two would be, I think of this in music, but this could apply to anything. You have to spend more time in music, spend more time listening than producing, and listen intake a broad variety of things, because that's how you'll come up with new ideas. If you just always listen to the same thing and then try to use the technology to reproduce that, you're going to come up with some very cliched, regurgitated stuff. so so originality comes from spreading a wide net, I would say. And I would also say being historically informed about what you're doing is also really, really
Mhm.
valuable. So in music, that would take the form of, for example, with house music has a really long history, and it's played some really important cultural roles for groups of people over the years. And I think if you understand where it came from and who were the people that made it and what kind of influences came over to it over the years, you have a much more rich perspective on what it is, and you'll be able to bring those ideas into your own production, as opposed to I only listened to what David Guetta did last year and I'm just trying to do what he did. That's, nothing great is going to come out of that, I'm afraid. So I guess those would be my tips.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. And maybe one extra question for you, because you're the music expert. What's your favorite band?
Well, I am a jazz musician originally, so I would say my favorite artist and who influenced me the most over the years is Miles Davis. And the reason that I liked him, and still something I try to live up to today, he never rested on his past accomplishments. He was always trying to move forward to do another thing and explore new territory. And that was what really inspired me about him.
And I guess that is something you teach to your students.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just like I'm saying, like, don't just follow in the footsteps of what somebody else did, like, strike out and do something new.
Cool, perfect. Well, thank you. So at the end of each episode, the guest answers a question posed by the previous guest. So after that, you'll have the opportunity to ask a question for the next guest. So here's your question, courtesy of Bonnie Sheriff, who is a linguistic accent advisor. We can listen to her question right now.
As long as AI runs in a profit driven system, access is going to be inherently unequal. How will unequal access to AI affect the ability to achieve in society going forward in the next few years? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think actually, though, the answer is very similar to the early days of computing and the internet. So in the 90s, people were really, really concerned about the digital divide, that poor people would never have computers and they would be left out of the internet and everything. But what we actually saw was that the prices of the technology came down so drastically that pretty much anybody who wanted a computer or to get on the internet could. So that really became a non-issue. And we saw the same thing with smartphones. At first, only wealthy Apple fans could afford to buy the first iPhone. Now everybody has an iPhone. It's considered like if you don't have an iPhone, you're, you know, on the bottom rung of penury, basically. And we've already seen this in AI. I think this isn't really that well known, but since GPT-4 came out, I think the cost of AI processing has gone down like 97% or something like this. So I actually don't think the cost will be a big factor. And the open source AIs are already, I think DeepSeek costs like 3% of what Claude costs or something like that. So I don't think that'll be a factor really. What will be a factor is more understanding what it could do for you and how it could help you. I think it'll be more of a knowledge gap than people will be not able to afford it.
All right, perfect. So now, what question would you like to pose for the next guest?
I think the question I'm most interested in that I've been asking other people is, it's kind of comes back to this 80-20 thing. If AI could do the 80% of your job that is the most repetitive and technical, and you were left with the other 20%, what would that 20% be? what would that look like? What would you be doing?
Perfect. Thank you, John. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a really interesting conversation today. Thanks.
And that wraps up another episode of AI Experience. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. Your support counts, and your comments can really help share this experience with others. You can also visit the website ai-experience.io to find out more. See you soon for a new episode.